Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PhoenixUK show, presented to you by Blue Microphones. How's it going, Gum?
Wow, Jasmine, I'm absolutely I'm feeling good tonight. Actually, yeah, I've had a very good
Friday
week.
night.
It's been a good day today, so yeah, I'm all good. I'm all ready for this show. What about you?
I'm feeling pretty ready for it. I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty nervous. I think I had mentioned to you guys previously that I'm feeling a bit nervous because it's not really an area where many orgs or companies or anything. I've not really seen many talk shows in esports addressing mental health in esports and in the gaming industry. So I think that's probably why I'm feeling a little bit nervous. But yeah, we'll be fine.
Yeah, so the general gist of this tonight is basically to cover mental health in esports and take a look at probably one of the biggest subjects that is going to be going forward for the next probably 10 years, especially as the pandemic has kind of escalated the issues around mental health over the last year or so. And it's something I think you yourself, Jasmine, was quite passionate about getting on this show and making sure that we looked at it as a wider subject. And I certainly feel that mental health is something that hasn't been, openly tackled within the esports scene by anyone. And what we've seen, especially over the last year or so, is the fact that more organizations are now having to deal with mental health, with the players that are citing burnout, for example, or just issues that are going on in the scenes that we don't necessarily know about. Unfortunately, we live in the age of social media where everything is instant at your fingertips. And whilst social media is a blessing, it can be a great curse, especially to those players who, when they lose matches, they're obviously going to see all the negative feedback straight off the sort of the back of that defeat, and it's never never the greatest thing to actually have to witness as a player when you see various different people who don't know you, but they all sort of cite you as being the player that's probably missed a shot that could have got one of the games, or it could have turned matches on its head. So we're certainly living in a different age now where people are so much more closer together through social media. And it's certainly one of the big topics that, we needed to cover, especially this time round, or especially in my idea anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I feel like for a lot of people, we have the phrase keyboard warriors, and I feel like that's probably the best way of referring to people who just send players hate if they lose a match. And I do social media management, and I've done social media management for organizations, and that hate that people send is not just to the players, that is to the company accounts and all sorts of things like that as well. So it's not like it's just oh, they'll only say it to the odd person here or there, but people actively go out of their way to send hate and make other people feel miserable. And I still, for the life of me, cannot understand or figure out why, because especially in a pandemic like this, people are still doing it. And it's like there's so much going wrong in the world right now. Why would you want to add to someone else's struggles that they might be facing on a daily basis, and you have no idea about it? And I think the biggest thing that people kind of need to acknowledge is, yes, just because you see like a face on a screen that seems really confident and really outgoing and really, positive about everything, does not actually mean that that person does not struggle on a daily basis to do some of the most basic things. And I'm hoping by us doing this show, it kind of educates people a bit better about the struggles that their friends or family or just random strangers on the internet might be facing, and it kind of helps people think twice before sending a hateful message. but also to educate and help people who might be struggling, that are finding it difficult to, evaluate their next steps and kind of understand what they can do to kind of help manage how they might be feeling and where they can kind of go for that help.
Yeah, certainly. I didn't want to also, make this show completely doom and gloom. Like, there are a lot of success stories out there where people have entered gaming and found ways of having gaming help them with their own demons and with their own mental health issues in their own lives. We don't want to just hear and say, there's a lot of bad things going on within mental health, but there are those positive stories, and I do have a couple that I just want to sort of highlight highlight now. Mostly because, I think we should start on a positive, actually. We've already sort of glanced over the sort of doom and gloom stuff, but I'm going to tell you a little story, Jasmine, about a message I got on New Year's Eve. I'm not going to name the person because obviously confidentiality and all that kind of jazz, but I just wanted sort of what has actually, transpired. And this sort of is something that touches on mental health and how this person sort of used gaming as a way of overcoming their own sort of mental health issues and being able to connect with friends and communities within the industry. So this message starts saying, "Happy early New Year. I've had a lot happen this year. Most of all, looking at what's gotten me to where I am, the friends I have, how I've changed, etc. And though it may seem to be in a minor way, you've actually had a part in this to be part of new communities and friend groups, most of which aren't exactly local to me, and none of that would have happened if my first trip to EGX back in 2016 had been a bad or worse experience, which is where you have had a huge hand in how that went. You were commentating at the Overwatch booth. Apparently I commentated. While I liked watching Overwatch games before that, I liked it even more after. I still don't play though. I'm an RPG gamer after all. It'd been a little more than a year since I'd gotten bariatric surgery to keep me from dying under my own weight. I used to be a solid 20 stone, not good for being 5'3", and I was not used to walking around like that. I'd also never been to any kind of game convention before that, unless you count Minecon 2012, which was definitely a meh. EGX 2016 was one of the best and most fond memories. Over the 3 days I was there, I kept taking breaks by watching Overwatch tournaments you hosted. And though I was just a simple Pikachu onesie, you kept mentioning, "Oh, Pikachu is here. Pikachu is back. Did you see Pikachu on the EGX Snapchat yesterday?" You have no idea how much that has rippled through the years since then. Because of that event, I went back every autumn, and at EGX 2019, I really started making some solid friends from EPIC and others I have met there. And I started being more comfortable with wanting to do cosplays. From the bottom of my emotional, nerdy heart that often has trouble with how to stop talking when it starts, thank you. When I get to England next time after the pandemic is dealt with, I owe you the biggest hug for having been a key part of it all. So I thought that's one of probably the best messages I've ever had, because it shows how a simple, small, minor influence at a big gaming event can have and affect people's mental health and well-being. Something that, we should remind ourselves going forward in terms of, any small details can really turn someone's life around. And that just speaks volumes to me anyway.
Yeah, I feel like I started tearing up. I'm not gonna lie. That is an amazing message to receive, and I think people often, especially mainstream media, often focuses so much on, oh, your kids are playing video games, it's not good, get your kids away from the video games, it's going to brainwash them. And, it almost feels like they kind of have it out for gaming, the games industry, and gamers as a whole. But I feel like a lot of what they don't focus on is how positive the gaming industry and the gaming community really is. I know myself, like I've said this time and time again, I have made lifelong friends that, I will speak to for the rest of my life, that I want there on my wedding day, and they are from the games industry. They're people that I've met through esports, and I honestly wouldn't have it any other way. Like, people at school used to kind of poke fun at the fact that I would play video games with people that kind of lived across the world, but I look at people in school now, and they don't speak to any of the people that they were friends with in high school. So that to me says, if I've been able to maintain contact and a genuine friendship with those people that you made fun of me being friends with online, then I don't really know what to say to that. Like, you made fun of me for absolutely no reason, because they are people that I genuinely want there, like on my wedding day, and people that I'm forever grateful for having in my life. Because, like, people in the industry right now, some of you might know, Gump, I think that, like, I struggle with anxiety. I myself also have depression, and people a lot of the time, like, when they find out, they kind of say, oh, but you don't look like you have anxiety. Oh, but you do like all these events and stuff. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's cool, but I do all these events, but that doesn't stop me from having panic attacks and getting anxious and stuff. And I kind of put myself in a position where I am in front of a camera, where I am, kind of forcing myself to break down everything that I'm kind of scared of. So I think for people to kind of judge people in the way in which they're saying, you don't look like you're struggling, you don't seem like you're struggling, but you're so happy all the time, people kind of need to realize it is very easy to judge people just based off, how they look or how they might be feeling on a certain day. But TLDR, the games industry is amazing, and I think you're all awesome. So yeah, thank you for being a part of my life.
Yeah. I mean, gaming started for me as a way of escaping reality. So when I was back at school, obviously I was bullied a lot as being the fat kid in class, as you do. And gaming was kind of the one thing that sort of you sort of got into because it was a way of escaping what was being said at school, and you never had that issue where people would judge you on your looks or on how you were behind a screen, because obviously they don't know you in that way. So it was always one thing that I used as an escape mechanism, and to try and get myself out of being bullied. And like you, Jasmine, I've made some lifelong friends, some that I would call, incredibly close friends. This week I saw one friend who obviously is part of the EPIC.LAN crew. He came down, or he's been working down in Plymouth this week, and we caught up and had a few beers and, shared some emotional stories between us. But, these are the people. And I've always said, from an EPIC.LAN standpoint, that EPIC.LAN is more than just friends. It's a family. And,
Yeah.
EPIC.LAN to me is a second family. And that's how I feel when it comes to going to events and being with, the people in the EPIC.LAN setup, and not only that, but a lot of the punters that come along. Those people I could easily consider some of my friends as well, and do consider friends. So it is something where gaming brings together all kinds of different people from different backgrounds, and all of those people have different issues in their own lives. and gaming is our central hobby that helps us build or build a society together. I suppose, and sometimes you do hear the bad stories of when people send death threats and stuff to players who have lost matches, and you just like, why are we doing this? Esports and gaming should be the leading by example. We have the building blocks here for getting out there and becoming better and showing the world that kindness can win. So, from my perspective, gaming has certainly helped me get to a certain point in my life, and get confidence in my life as well. So, it's one of those things. But I'm sure we will, cover this more with our guest that we've got on today. So, Jasmine, do you want me to tell, or do you want me to tell you? Do you want to tell the rest of the sort of viewers and the people who are going to be listening to this podcast who this person is?
So our special guest for the Mental Health in Esports episode is Jason Docton from RAD. So Jason, would you like to come on and join us and tell us a little bit about yourself and RAD and what it is exactly that you guys do?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
I founded RAD, I want to say over 10 years ago now, initially as a World of Warcraft guild. For me, I hadn't left home in a long time. I was struggling with these panic attacks, and I had developed agoraphobia. Just every time I would attempt to leave home, it felt like something terrible would happen. To me, starting this guild, it was just a way to cope. It was a way to deal with a lot of the feelings that I was struggling with, and to, I guess, escape into a world that I felt was somehow less limited than the actual world for me. But over time, this guild attracted a lot of people like myself, attracted hundreds of people and then thousands of people, and grew into some kind of service, trying to help people like ourselves get professional help, trying to match people with therapists wherever they were, and ultimately trying to pay for these therapists as more and more people would come to our guild and express that they had no access to healthcare. That's really where it all began. Crowdfunding mental health care in a World of Warcraft guild, and where we are today, doing a lot of the same, still covering the cost of mental health care for people, still finding therapists for people all over the world. We've started to really lean into helping more people from the industry side, so working with a lot of game developers and studios, and helping their staff find therapists that get their lifestyle, get what the industry uniquely challenges people with. Working with a lot of content creators as well, who have very unique struggles, and probably what's more known, our work within the esports community, helping a lot of professional players. I myself sit on the board for the North American LCS Players Association, so a lot of being very proactive about player health. But that's really, RAD and myself in a nutshell. Just a bunch of gamers trying to help other gamers get therapy.
That does sound pretty rad to me. And I don't just mean the name of the company, I mean literally rad. I think what you guys do is absolutely amazing. And in case you guys at home, it wasn't clear enough for you. So if, for example, you're living in America or something like that, I know in America you guys actually have to pay for your healthcare, and if you want to go to a therapist or something like that, you have to fund that yourself. But RAD and the amazing work that they do, they make it so that if you are in need of help, you don't have to, be worried about being able to financially, fund getting that help. and I think it's absolutely amazing. I think it's great, especially considering, you know, not every country is as lucky as the UK. And I believe you guys, I saw on your website, you guys have so far helped people in 133 countries. That is an astounding number, and I think you guys, like, honestly, all the credit to you for all the work that you've done, especially considering, you know, it started from like a WoW guild, like a community of friends just being there for one another, and you've grown it into something absolutely beautiful. And I think you and your team should all be incredibly proud of that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a huge honor to be involved, and to just see the impact that the gaming community can have. You know, when we first started this, so many people would tell us that like gaming and mental health just doesn't make sense. It's a niche. If anything, gaming is really bad for your mental health. How do you justify people spending hours upon hours in front of a computer when they should be outside? Um, it was a lot of uphill, trying to prove that what we were doing made sense. At the same time, you know, the second we explain what we do to somebody in the gaming community, it just clicks immediately. There was no need for explanation. It's just, oh yeah, get it. I totally get it. You know, it's sometimes hard for people to realize the real power of the community that exists, how important this community is, how so many people socialize and learn how to be themselves within this community. Um, it just is, it's a place that I guess you can be measured more, on the surface for your skills, your ability to play than anything else. And that's not often afforded to us elsewhere. So to be able to exist within the gaming world and exist in the way that you choose to exist, and people accepting that so long as you can carry them, you know, that's a good starting ground for people like myself that have very little social skills but good in-game skills.
I think, do you think maybe the reason why people didn't used to get it, I don't know if this has changed now, if you were to speak to someone that isn't within the games industry, do you feel like they get it more now, or do you think we're kind of still in the same position that we were all those years ago when you started Rad?
A lot of the people I talk to, I don't think still understand, but they accept. You know, when it comes down to talking with different companies that are interested in, you know, doing some kind of charitable effort within the gaming worlds, they don't really understand how this works, or why this is an important thing to do. They just understand that gaming is big and they want to do something in gaming. When we talk with parents, other clinicians, um, usually it's, yeah, I still don't understand it, but this is all my kid does. Or, you know, every client I see plays games. So we're at least making steps forward in that regard.
I feel like maybe the reason why people don't usually get it is because unless you're a gamer, I could be completely off by saying this, but I know the majority of people that my friends and that I play games with all kind of got into gaming because it was that sense of escapism. Like, I studied games design, and even when it comes to creating games, you have to specify from the very start, do you want this game to provide a sense of escapism? Do you want to provide people with the ability to forget about their everyday lives and, you know, have a place where they can connect with other people without it needing to be in front of a webcam? You know, you can connect via your skills in game, like you mentioned, via voice chat, via making new friends and, you know, duo queuing together. And I think that's probably, in my opinion at least, why I feel like if you're not a gamer, you probably won't understand the importance of wanting to connect with people that have the similar, you know, interests and passion, and the reason why you all kind of got into gaming in the first place. Gump, did you want to hop in and do you have any questions that you wanted to?
Yeah, so you said that some people felt that gaming was bad for people's mental health. Could you go into depth, or into more depth, on that kind of citation, like why people feel that gaming is kind of bad for people's mental health?
Sure. I think it's a matter of breaking it down into two different pieces. One of like the biggest arguments has been addiction. Are video games addicting? Is somebody who is playing video games excessively addicted to games? Should we expect to see the same kind of symptoms related to other forms of addiction within this context? And then there is the, I think, I want to say that the best intentions, but the best intentions of societal standards. So, what I mean by that second one is this common notion of, kids shouldn't be inside all day; they should be outside all day. You shouldn't be playing video games. You should be hanging out with your friends in person. Um, Usually, somebody has the best intentions there. And as a society, when we see people breaking those kinds of boundaries, we have mixed reactions of concern, ridicule. We have ways of naturally pulling people back into what we see as acceptable from a societal standard, or pushing people even further away because we don't understand, they don't fit into this bubble. So just go over there. We don't like you. But, a parent who is worried that if their child stays in and plays video games all the time, that they just will miss out on certain milestones in life, that they won't build the friendships, have the relationships, and learn and have those experiences that they had growing up. It's a genuine place to be concerned, and it can be a lot harder to go back to a time where none of this really existed and try and imagine what it's like now, that somebody does socialize through playing video games with their friends, that a lot of kids do meet up at school, hang out in that group, and then go home and play games together. And maybe they don't catch up that weekend because they just want to play online all weekend together. These same processes are taking place. It's just, again, very hard for others outside of it to grasp that concept.
So I can imagine
that can shape our worldview, right? And what we want for young people. The addiction side, though, continues to be contested. Do people at times have problematic behavior surrounding their gaming? Absolutely. Some people will 100% sacrifice and make all kinds of unhealthy choices because this is what's important to them. It's part of just being a human, unfortunately. Some go so far as to say addiction is inherently something all humans struggle with, just some worse than others, or some with ones that we see as being worse than others. My perspective has been that so long as somebody feels as if the time they spend is time that they choose to spend, I think it's totally fine. Some people do choose to play video games all day because they're with their friends, they're with people they care about, or they're doing something that is fun or important to them. Saying that if you spent 20 hours playing with Legos, or digging outside or something like that is more valuable than climbing the ranks online, just because you won't get something tangible after. No, that's just how do you quantify that?
That's true.
I know.
Someone who used to play with a lot of Lego.
My mum actually, when I was younger, she absolutely hated me playing video games. Absolutely hated it. And it wasn't just because, it was me playing video games, because my brothers played video games too. It was also because, it's a male dominated, there's a lot of guys playing video games. So then there was the added, like, I don't want you playing video games because, I don't know what the guys that, you're playing video games with. I was like really young. I don't know what they're like. And then she sees things on the news and she's like, I don't want you going on the computer and doing this and that. And next thing I know, I've done a university degree in games and I work in the esports and gaming industry. So I think she kind of definitely understood it a lot more as the years went on. I think it might be because, mainstream media kind of started to ease up a bit. I mean, I feel like the stigma around esports and gaming is still kind of there very much. And, they try to plug the whole, oh, your kids need to go outside in order to, be happy in life. When in actual fact, a lot of the connections that I've made, at least, are with people that I've met online. So I think it's up to, people within the industry to kind of keep pushing this notion, keep educating parents and teachers and schools about, it's not all doom and gloom. A lot of people do find happiness and friendships and a lot more through being in the games industry. But for you, Jason, do you feel like do RAD also help people outside of the games industry?
Yeah, many people. Gaming is a huge part of what we do. It's where the vast majority of our donations come from. It's where the vast majority of people find us through live streams like this, through Twitter posts from content creators. That is where almost everything comes from. But from time to time, people reach out to us who have no interest in gaming, no connection to gaming. Whether it's national hotlines referring people to us or other nonprofits referring people to us. We get referrals from pretty much every level of government across multiple countries, and it's usually a really curious thing for some of these people that find us, because they come in and all they know is, okay, so you pay for my mental health care? I'm like, yeah, cool. Okay, so what do I have to do? There's nothing. You just go to therapy, I guess. Like, oh, okay, how's this possible? A bunch of gamers got together, raised some money over the weekend, so you are going to therapy this week. They're just like, that. Okay, I'm not questioning it. Just cool. I'll go to therapy then.
And what's the main difference that you've kind of noticed between people who kind of approach RAD and kind of require and want that help versus people outside of the games industry that come and approach RAD? Are there any notable differences in the kind of help that people generally are after, or would you say it's just a mix of everything?
It's usually not too different. I think we have a lot of different diagnoses. We have a lot of ways of really organizing thought around suffering and pain, and maladaption maybe is the right term there. But at the end of the day, when we meet people, initially they really just want to be heard. They want to be understood. They want to be accepted. And when we create that space, then we start to see kind of the functional side of it. Well, I don't leave home very often because I fear that something might happen to me, or I sleep too much, or I don't sleep at all. We can start to classify these if it's helpful. But even across all of these different classifications, a lot of the symptoms end up being very similar or having a lot of overlap. Maybe age tends to be a better way to see differences in common diagnoses, so to speak. Usually the younger people that we work with, it's a lot of anxiety. It's a lot of depression. You know, it can be surreal when, you know, we were talking with like a 9-year-old about the anxiety that they have. Um, I don't remember having any kind of anxiety at 9 other than if something was going to come out of my closet at night. And, you know, for that, I could just hide under the covers. But there's very real world anxiety being faced at 9 now. When we look at some of the older groups we work with, people in their 50s and 60s, sometimes even in their 40s, it's a lot of burnout. It's a lot of career. It's a lot of, I think I screwed up everything. Do I get a reset? Can I start over? It's a lot of meaning of life, a lot of purpose, and still anxiety and depression fit into those. But those tend to, I guess, those age ranges, to get back to that question, are usually where we see the differences.
That has, I don't know about you, Gump, but that 9 years old, that's so young. I think that kind of just goes to show, though, like, I feel like the sooner people kind of are more accepting of the fact that, you know, okay, mental health is very much a real thing. It's not just my child is having a bad day. The sooner people kind of acknowledge and realize that and seek the help, the sooner they can, you know, start to make progress in helping their child. But I feel like a lot of parents are probably maybe still in denial. Maybe it's a generational difference, perhaps. But 9 years old, that's young.
Yeah, that's odd to hear that 9-year-olds are having that much of a struggle. But I suppose kids naturally see the world in a very different way, and they're very much in tune with their own emotions, and especially those people around them, like their parents, they pick up a lot of their emotions from their parents. And if their parents are going through a hard time, you can bet that some of the kids are going through a hard time. So maybe it isn't as surprising as it should be. But that is genuinely surprising.
Yeah.
What kind of like struggles do these 9-year-olds have, or come to you with? Like, I'm trying to think back to when I was 9 years old, and I'm trying to think what kind of struggles in my life I actually had, and I just don't. Yeah, I can't grasp that.
I think that's it, though. Like, there doesn't always have to be a reason for it, right? Like,
no,
you could, you know, go to sleep on time, eat the right food and everything, but there's still that feeling there. I feel like they don't necessarily have to have, you know, a bad time somewhere for it to kind of affect them. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jason. Obviously, you're the expert.
It's I mean, there's a lot of back and forth on it. You know, we've looked at the genetic components to this. Is this something that can be passed down? We've looked at the environmental aspects of this. There's so many different things that can complicate this. You know, on the one side, yeah, growing up, you at that very, very young age are really just getting your bearings of what it means to even exist. You know, you're not necessarily contemplating other people's roles in your life as heavily, more so as you're still really establishing your own life, and you in this world. But depending on where you grow up, 9 is a significant amount of time to have been alive and to make assertions about the world. I think, you know, to pull away from anything that is current. You know, one of my favorite mental health professionals, Dr. Gabor, Dr. Gabor Mate, he kind of describes his own childhood growing up in Hungary in the 1930s, 1940s or so. And he recounts that his mother was taking him to their family doctor and saying that, I don't know why, but my child is crying all of the time. um, it's not hungry or anything like that. I don't know what's wrong. And the doctor's saying, I'm not too sure either, but a lot of the Jewish children that I look after are crying, um, and seem to be really struggling. And what he couldn't have possibly known at the time is, what was going on as World War II was um, beginning, and the fear that a lot of people had in Hungary of what was going to happen to them. And even as a child, somebody who is establishing, is this world safe? I don't know, everybody around me is stressed, everybody around me is upset, everybody around me is hurting. That immediately takes in and shapes a lot of his life going forward. um, there are definitely places in the world where so many things are happening that you're just seeing around you, that this isn't a safe place to be, and facilitating that at an early age. Or sometimes the 9-year-olds that we've been seeing that are in really well-to-do areas, sometimes it's just the pressure from parents of, well, I go to school with this family whose 9 or 10-year-old is already famous on YouTube. Do I do I need to reach that? I'm not there, so I don't know. um, it's something that, it's not massively common for us to see, but it is concerning when we do come across that.
Yeah. And how about when it comes to the games and esports industry, what's an area that you feel in particular isn't spoken about enough in terms of, your mental health, for example? Is it things like burnout, nutrition, exercising, the anxiety side of things? What's an area that you feel isn't addressed or spoken about enough?
Yeah, I mean, you could just say all of it, but I think what I have come to find in working with a lot of professional players is relationships. Um, they're very seldom discussed, and yet they are a huge part of what's going on behind the scenes. Um, I mean, think about getting ready to compete and you're going through a major breakup, or you're having a falling out with your friends, or you're still arguing with your parents about your career. Relationships play a huge factor. And especially when you look at kind of the older era of esports, a lot of pros that have been in the scene for a while. You know, it's weird to say, but older as in like their 20s, maybe mid to late 20s, or even early 30s at this point, for some of the games. What was that like before esports? Before there was money, before there was fame, before there was any kind of sustainability, you had somebody who was grinding out 10 plus hours a day in a game for rank. Just the different motivations at that level. I come across time and time again players who were at those high ranks because this was really all that's going on. And there was no plan. There was no, hey, this is good. Twitch is going to be a thing and I'm going to be rich. There was no, I'm going to get signed with a team that's got BMW or some car company as a sponsor. There was just, this is it. And now suddenly it's all been rewarded. And now they have romantic interests and now they're with people all of the time. And it starts to create a lot of different problems because there's not a whole lot of prior experience going into that. Don't see that as much with some of the younger players that are getting in, but definitely some of the older scene relationships. Just, I've seen a lot of players even leave, not being vocal about their reasons for leaving, but just leave their scenes because of relationship issues. Um, it's really hard to see.
Do you often see, like, I know you have like traditional celebrities, actors and actresses and stuff. A lot of them have been quite vocal about struggling when it comes to, fans wanting to take photos with them and people wanting autographs and being spammed with messages and things like that. Do you get the same kind of thing from a lot of professional players where they just don't know how to cope with so many people wanting to be around them all the time?
Yeah, I get that a lot from pro players. I get that a lot from content creators. Um, I've worked with people who are kind of just starting in their career, but I've also worked with people who are, hitting those double digit 1,000 concurrent views when they go live, and the experiences they have are really unique, and it seems to start off the same. At first, it's kind of uncomfortable. There's like, oh my gosh, like people recognize me. That's so weird. But that's kind of cool. There's some level of excitement and just feeling really, I guess, equally affectionate towards fans, wanting to be there for them, wanting to engage. But over time, some of the negativity starts to wear and tear and create aversion to viewership, to fans in general. Sure, most of my fans are really great fans. They're really nice. I'm happy to engage with them, but there's always that one person that if I make a post is going to say something terrible, that if I tell people I'm going to show up here is also going to show up here and cause problems. There's just these kind of incidents that lead to not wanting to engage with people anymore, not wanting to be as public anymore, right? And we see this with all types of entertainers, that usually things are really positive, and then a couple of paparazzis or maybe situations with stalking take place, and now they just don't want to engage with anybody, because as great as it can feel to engage with people who care about you and you care about, the overwhelming challenge and stress of dealing with people who are very negative towards you, that's just how our brain is set up. We're going to prioritize avoiding that.
Yeah. I think it's a shame. It's a shame that, a lot of the time, like, fans could probably do absolutely nothing wrong and just want to take photos with someone at an event, but there is always kind of going to be that sense of, like, overwhelming, okay, that's a lot of people. It's kind of making me freak out a bit. Like, I get the exact same, like, when I get on stage and stuff, I'm like, I freak out. And I know for players, that's probably, a million times more panic and more worry. And I think it's important that people kind of appreciate and respect the, I've seen players at events before when, they just want to go and get a drink from the shop, and you've got a swarm of people running after them, and it's just kind of like, I feel bad for them, because I understand the fans because they're in awe of, oh my god, this is my idol, the person I've been looking up to for so long. But at the same time, I feel how that player's feeling, and you kind of just want to be able to have your own time and your own space where you're not constantly being chased after.
I suppose that's a difficult one though, because sometimes, and I think maybe this is where various different mental health organisations, including RAD, and is a way of getting through to perhaps the tournament organisers to perhaps have a dedicated certain amount of times when players can be having those kind of autograph sessions and stuff like that. Instead of because from my perspective, if I do see a player who's just wandering about doing their business, I'm not really going to go up to them, because firstly, I'm going to be anxious meeting, various different players that I may look up to. And secondly, I also, if I was in their position, I don't from my perspective, if I was in their position, I don't think I would want my downtime to be interrupted all the time by fans. And I think that's where sometimes fans don't really realize exactly what they're doing, because it's this is their downtime. You know, if you want to go to a signing session, go to a signing session when the players are actually doing their signing stuff and signing autographs. But if they're, you know, wandering around the venue and having a look, then that's their downtime. Have a bit of respect on their privacy on that. But sometimes, like, some players will happily invite that, and I think that there is perhaps a need for boundaries to be set going forward. You know, especially from a player perspective, just to sort of, you know, even because I suppose the greatest fear for a player is if they said no to someone asking for a picture, it's on Reddit the next afternoon. Like that's the problem. We live in this sort of day and age of social media being the powerful tool it is, and a post like that will go on Reddit and be like, "Oh wow, device snubbed my picture. Why didn't he do this?" That kind of thing, you know. And I think people just forget that these guys are human. They're human beings. They do need their downtime. They do need to go and grab a drink or food or whatever, and don't want to be pestered all the time. So I think that is perhaps one of the next steps going forward, like with tournament organisers as such being the facilitators to that, and helping players perhaps shape their schedules a bit better.
Yeah, you see it a lot with really, really big content creators, like large followers for a professional player, that usually they've got some kind of boundaries really well established. You know, this is when I'm showing up, this is when I'm leaving, this is how much it costs for me to be here, this is what I'm okay with doing, this is what I'm not okay with doing. And it can seem really bizarre because you're like, who the hell are you? You know, like, why would I do any of this? But it's something that they've just had to learn through experience, that this is what keeps me feeling comfortable to do stuff like this. This is what I need to just be okay with everything going on, because it's a lot that's going on. Enforcing those boundaries is pretty hard, especially when you want to make sure that you keep getting gigs, that you keep getting invited places, that you are seen as easy to work with in the industry, especially as you're starting. But when you don't have any of those kinds of boundaries set, you learn really quickly, especially from a business side, especially from a fan side, that people will push as much as they can. And it's a very punishing experience to have people compromise and make you feel that on that level of discomfort. So yeah, boundary setting is usually something that we work with a lot of pro players on pretty early on into engaging with them, making sure that they understand what they're comfortable with, what they're not comfortable with, and how to manage the situations where someone will test those boundaries. And how to manage the situations where you compromise in some way.
Yeah. Well, that brings us nicely to a chance to have a little bit of a break, because I don't know about you guys, but I definitely need to refill my drink. We're going to come back in a couple of minutes' time, and hopefully we'll be able to tackle some more questions to Jason. So stay tuned. Welcome
everybody.
back. Yeah, welcome back, Jasmine. How you feeling now? You feeling less nervous?
Yeah, I am feeling a lot less nervous. I feel like I don't know, it's nice and it's refreshing to be able to have the conversations about the hard-hitting topics. A lot of the time, everybody we play games with, it's kind of just everyone finishes work, gets online, plays games. Nobody really we used to kind of sit down and talk about the heavy-hitting topics, but I feel like nowadays everyone's so busy with work, stream, and stress of like everything happening IRL that it's kind of nobody really sits down to talk about this kind of stuff. So I think it's nice, and this is kind of, it kind of shows that this is more of what we need to be doing within our community and within our industry.
Yes. I think I've been quite genuinely surprised by some of the stories that Jason's kind of said in our chat so far, in terms of like, for example, the 9-year-olds that are approaching RAD, having to deal with mental health at that age. And it's a rather odd one, because remembering when I was 9 years old, it was just like, oh, kind of bit, it's just like I didn't really have much on my shoulders at that point, like, and not compared to now when you're older and you're living on your own and you've got a lot more to pay for and stuff like that. It's just so weird and strange, but so it's just one of those things, isn't it? But I definitely wanted to do mental health and cover it in some detail. And like I said in the early part of the show, it's in this age where we're in the social media age that, you really want to hammer home some of the finer points about mental health. So if you have got a chance, then please do !RAD in the chat if you're watching us on Twitch tonight. That takes you to the link to RAD's website as a way of, if you need any kind of help with your mental health, then please, don't feel like you're alone, and don't feel like that your issues are a burden to anyone else. Because I tell you what, that's one of the greatest things that people think, is that they think that everyone's got problems, so my problems being shared with anyone else is just a burden, isn't it? And it's not really. Like, your problems are not a burden to anyone else. Your problems are your problems, but they're easier to fix if you have help from people. So we're going to welcome back Jason, and we're going to talk to Jason a little bit more.
Hello.
Back.
Hello, Jason.
Hey.
Don't forget the giveaway.
Don't spoilers. No spoilers.
Yeah, don't spoil it. Cool. Ooh. Yeah.
You're going to be in trouble now.
Oh boy.
We don't want to talk about any giveaways. What? Okay. Right.
Should I go first?
Yes, you can go first, Jasmine.
I'm going to hit you with the hard-hitting stuff now. You ready for this, Jason?
Yeah.
So one big thing within our industry, so I've been a part of the visual effects industry, game industry, esports industry, and one common factor that keeps coming up is the sense of burnout. This topic of overworking yourself, kind of not knowing when to quit, and just generally feeling run down because of, the crunch, because of just general burnout. And I know for a fact in the esports industry, this is going to be, especially with players, something that you will no doubt encounter time and time again. But have you got any tips and methods for which people can kind of use to be able to work their way through this burnout, and maybe some tips that employers might be able to adopt and listen to that could help them?
Yeah, absolutely. Burnout. Burnout is incredibly common in this industry and in general. We are struggling with burnout, even on a generational level. Um, a lot of burnout tends to surround the reality that at times we feel is there's just no actual goal. We're not moving anything forward. We're just kind of doing things. So when you imagine just playing the same game over and over and over again, when you imagine drawing the same assets over and over and over again, writing the same code, it without any kind of clear goal, without any kind of achievable like micro goals that really reward you for making any progress, the brain just becomes tired. It doesn't see the reason to be doing what you're doing. You wake up and there's no real motivation to get out of bed. You find yourself doing other things as much as possible, and even if those don't inherently have a goal, still finding more meaning and purpose in them. I see a lot of pro players just pick up random games and start loving those games even more than the game that they're a professional in, because they can set up things in there like, oh, I guess I could grind to the top of this ladder, or I could try and unlock these things, or I could get this kind of viewership with this game. It's anything that gets away from where they feel they've kind of lost touch of the why. So if these things, if this pattern, if some of that starts to sound familiar, um, addressing burnout is kind of systematic. We really want to take time to map and organize, getting back into the flow of things, rebuilding passion for something. Taking a break is a very common way of addressing burnout. It's creating distance between ourselves and what we're working on, so that we're not feeling as if we're still just kind of running in circles. We get to step back for long enough to revisit and remember why we're doing what we're doing, why we care about this game, why we still play this game. Taking breaks is going to be incredibly important. From an org level, players don't usually have vacation time, or vacations in general, um, but it's pretty necessary. Um, Having set hours, set hours where this is what I do and then I stop. At the end of this, also really critical. Whether that needs to be implemented from an org standpoint or from a player standpoint, um, doing like 7 in the morning to, I don't know, like 1 or 2 p.m. where I'm playing this game or streaming this game. And then after that, I do this. These hours I take breaks. This is when I'm done completely with anything related to my gaming career. And I lay in bed, I watch Netflix, I do something else. Very, very critical. Um, Another component of burnout that tends to be really problematic is we start to see that the relationships in our life all surround the one thing that we're starting to burn out of. Um, so if all you play is League of Legends and all of your friends play League of Legends, all of your friends are other pro players, what do you do if you're not playing League of Legends? Like, who do you talk to? Who do you hang out with? Who are you engaging with? Um, a lot of people become really untethered when they take a step back, and it makes them feel even more forced to play the game that they don't want to play. It builds even more animosity, more discomfort, more anxiety, depression towards this game, because what choice do you have? Be isolated, be alone, or play. So we usually want, and instruct people to build relationships outside of that, to build friendships outside of the game. Well, outside of that particular game, anyways, build friendships outside of your org. Build friendships with people who can help ground you when you feel kind of lost in this other or in this main game that you play. The other aspects of this usually are going to come down to, once you have your life really scheduled and organized, once you've created good friendships in and outside of the game, you've started to take breaks, have vacations, where you're away for a good amount of time. Then we start to look at what else is going on in your life. Do you have hobbies outside of this, or do you have other things that you can do for fun that really just distract you, but are also within this scheduled time? So nothing you get too lost in, but something that you just do for fun. Do we, start looking maybe at the preventative aspect even further? Is this somebody who is exercising regularly? Is this someone who maintains a specific diet? Is this someone who's sleeping well? These can seem trivial, but they greatly impact our mental health. Sleep, especially. Sleep and burnout go together in the most horrible ways. As sleep declines, the likelihood of burning out, the likelihood of depression, anxiety symptoms, it rapidly increases. Our ability to even manage stress, um, to have resilience towards stress, is compromised when we don't sleep well. It's a very scary thing. Um, so we start to look at all of these. Um, but when we zoom out and we look at people who are actively experiencing burnout and who don't have any kind of struggles with burnout, we see two very different images. We see one person who is working nonstop, has no schedule, takes no breaks, has been doing this every day for a long time, has all of their relationships within this game, and eventually goes, I hate everything about this game. I'm done. I'm not streaming anymore. I'm not playing anymore. I'm over it. And then, Twitter's deleted, Discord's deleted. They're gone. And then another person who's, yeah, like, I went for a walk this morning. Had to work out for a little bit. Played games for a couple of hours, did some scrims for a couple of hours, streamed for a couple of hours. Now I'm going to go hang out with some friends. We're going to play Among Us or something completely different. That person and then goes to bed at a decent time, gets good sleep. It's probably not going to burn out anytime soon, because not only do they have enough really healthy balance in their life, but they're not tunnel visioning this game in a way that there no longer appears to be any kind of goal. There no longer appears to be any kind of reason. It's a part of their life, and certainly an important part of their life, but it doesn't occupy so much time that it becomes a like, I guess, a mysterious void within their life that just consumes everything around it.
I think one thing that's quite tricky about our industry is that there's this constant topic and thought of grind. You have to be grinding at all times. Like, if you want to work in esports, if you want to work in the games industry, you have to be willing to, put in 10 plus hours a day, 12 hours a day. You have to live, eat, and breathe esports and gaming. Like, if you need to stay up late, do it. If you need to cancel plans with your family, do it. Because people who kind of grind to that extent, that's when you're eventually going to make it. And I feel like that's the one thing that is most definitely going to lead to burnout. Have you encountered and heard of, people being like, well, if I don't grind and if I don't, I might have plans with my team to finish at a certain time, but I need to keep pushing because if I don't, then, my future is being compromised.
Always. Yeah. I mean, we go back to those two very different people that I outlined. One is, you could say, is grinding. Mm-hmm. They wake up, they go live, they stream their scrims, they stream their practice, then they go offline and they keep playing, they keep practicing, because that's the real practice, because they're not on their Smurf, they're not on their creator account anymore, they're just really going at it. That person is not going to do well. It's like right now I'm driving around in this Ferrari and I'm going real fast, but I'm going to run out of gas real quick and I'm going to run this car into the ground. And that person in the Prius is still going. Um, you know, they they might not get as much attention as the person zooming by in the Ferrari, but that's unfortunately how things go. We have a limited amount of time within our day, and from my experience, the effectiveness of grinding is very, very limited, very, very limited. Somebody can legitimately find some reward in sitting down and going all in nonstop. This is what I'm going to do. I just need to grind out the work. But over time, as they do this day after day, week after week, month after month, maybe even year after year, if they're fortunate, the quality of what they turn out in that grind drops considerably. The lack of sleep means that you're not focused well, that you're not making good decisions. The lack of I guess, tethering, grounding to things outside of this game means that you start to build distaste, disdain towards that. Not having strong relationships, not tending to those relationships means that you're stuck with whoever's in the lobby. And sometimes the people in the lobby are not very nice, almost famously toxic. And that
That's
becomes
true.
your world. And it is not a good place to be. I hear this even from content creators that are like, yeah, but if I don't go live, somebody else will get my viewers. They'll get my Prime sub, right? So shouldn't I just go live anyways, even if it's not as good? Maybe. But how long is that person going to be around at that rate? How long is this person going to be in the scene?
Mm-hmm.
Not a whole heck of a long time. Um, some of the greatest people that I've seen within the pro league have like come and gone very, very quickly because that's it. They burn out. And the unfortunate reality of where we sit is once they're gone, that's it. Sometimes they're mentioned, sometimes they're remembered. Most of the time it's on to the next person. And then there's a couple of those people who are just staples within the community. They've found a way to kind of contain their grind, their initial grind, and really diversify their life. And they build the longevity. They're here for a long time. And we love those people. We still know of those people. We still see them everywhere. Um, but it's a hard thing, and everybody's balance of this is completely different. It's one you really have to feel out and determine for yourself when I'm just doing this for the sake of doing this, and I'm hurting myself doing this. Um, Sacrifice is definitely something we tend to value, and mastery is something we tend to value as a society, but you really have to value yourself over your place in society, because that's all that ends up mattering in the end.
Exactly. Um, Anthony has just mentioned this on Twitch chat, but he feels that the burnout is industry wide and not just for players. Have you had admins, staff, for like big tournament organizers, production crew, those kind of types of people who have approached you and said that they're also feeling that burnout is an issue?
Oh yeah, I mean it's like I said, it sometimes it just seems like it's even a generational thing at this point. Like this specific generation is really facing it, but everybody does at any career, any level. Um, it's a thing that we're pushed to. I mean, imagine just being a video editor. At first you're like, yeah, I want to put this transition together. It's going to be amazing. People are going to like it. You put it out there. Your senior lead doesn't really say much. Like, okay, cool. Yeah, send it to me in Slack. Send it via email. Thanks. And you don't see much reaction from it. Then you're just like, oh, okay, maybe I try harder this next one. Maybe I need to do more. Um, Maybe gets slightly better feedback, maybe continues to be neutral. And at that point, you just stop really caring about it. People then give you, hey, these 30 clips, I need them turned into more stuff. I need content. I need a commercial. I need this. I need this transition. I need that. And you've just got this stack of stuff. And why would you care? If you're not going to get any kind of reward, if there's no goal in front of you, if there's no appreciation, and the person directly above you is probably feeling the same thing. Like, I just keep getting told I need all of this stuff last minute, so I'm offloading it onto you. I'm not any happier than you are, but I don't have to do this, so I guess that's good. And it just keeps cascading downward as more and more people are given what increasingly feels like meaningless tasks, unappreciated tasks.
So would you give the same kind of advice to people working in the industry that aren't just players, production crews, and that, everybody kind of working in the industry, if they're facing burnout, what would you say your number one tip would be?
To have boundaries. To have those boundaries and be very specific about them. This industry loves to just churn and burn people. You are amongst many young, newly graduated college students who can work on this and until you break down, and then there's someone else that will. And that is a devastating feeling that we see far too commonly. Pushing back on that seems counterintuitive. It really does, and it might cost you opportunities. I hear an echo all of a sudden. Is that just... Oh, there it
goes. I feel like a lot of the time, though, I know I've felt this at least, like when I'm feeling burnt out, it's kind of like well, if I don't do this job, someone else will. So I don't want to lose the opportunity of what's in front of me because I can't just, power through it. And then you end up feeling silly because it's like people would kill to be in the position that you're in. So you just kind of say to yourself, well, why can't I just do it?
Yeah. It can be like that. Except, when I think, people would kill to be in this position, it unfortunately is, they'll do that to themselves to get into this position, not other people. Because that's what happens. We just seem to be in that kind of culture. One of the things that I almost immediately try and strike from organizations that I work with is stack ranking. This is a leadership approach, but stack ranking is let's say, take 10 of your tournament organizers, and the lowest performing 3, they're gone. They're fired no matter what. That's just how it goes. You keep the best of the best, and you constantly cycle in new talent. Wow, what a terrible way to treat people. But from a corporate side, that gets you what you feel you need, and you keep your highest performing people motivated to perform, because it's not a matter of I'm just going to keep doing the same level. It's, well, there's more people who might beat me now and push me far enough down to lose my job. So I actually have to go nonstop. And it's not a distance race. It's not you're going to outperform that. It's they're just going to keep working you until you're done and you're gone, because they don't see you as anything but an asset to the organization. At the end of the day, though, a lot of these groups end up losing. They end up losing out because they don't have people who genuinely care. They don't have people who are genuinely passionate, who are healthy, who are in a good place, who perform significantly better than anyone who is just running away from the guillotine day after day. So some of it is the reality. We need to change the industry. We need to have an impact at that level. That to me is why I joined things like the NALCS Players Association, is to stop that behavior, because I can try and help this person over and over again who's struggling with burnout, but at the end of the day, these fears may be very real, and I can't protect them from that. I can only help them to respect themselves and respect their own boundaries and continue with that until they find a place that will respect that as well. And that sometimes can be really hard. And sometimes this industry really only respects other people who have been running for so long because they've proven themselves.
Yeah.
So it can be a toxic situation for sure.
I think it just needs to be regulated better. I feel like a lot of the times there's just no structure, there's no regulation. It's kind of, this is esports, take it or leave it as it is. And I think it's a shame because we could have something so amazingly healthy. You know, we've got a booming industry, so many opportunities, so many tournaments and games and viewers and mainstream media wanting to watch it all. What a shame to throw away all the talent that comes with that just because we can't regulate it a bit better.
Yeah.
I think this is because, unfortunately, every other industry is exactly the same. And I think esports hasn't led in a different way because we've all tried to be or molded into the same as what everything else is going on in every other industry. You know, like Jason has already said, the churning of talent is there, and that's apparent in every industry. And yet, esports has never tried to make it different and tried to go with a different way. Like, you know, you're right, Jasmine. We should be leading by example. Like I said earlier on in this particular, the segment earlier at the start, you know, we could lead by being better. We could be saying that esports and gaming is a way of being kinder to more people. And, you know, we can lead by example, yet we choose not to for some reason. And too many tournament organizers, too many organizations get away with, you know, not being regulated. And that is the fundamental problem here is we don't have any proper regulation. It is left to publishers to regulate their own games. And even then, some of those publishers have different approaches to different games that they own. And it's very conflicting what they do. You know, it's like, for example, certain publishers will allow betting to happen in certain games, but not in other games that they own. So it's just like, you know, there needs to be that regulation. And unfortunately, until someone takes a step towards that and says, we're going to start regulating, but they need to do it in a way that brings everyone together, because you're never going to get, you know, a solidifying kind of argument from or agreement, from all the various different tournament organizers for a proper regulating body of esports. Until we get that,
I feel like we need an actual like association, like an actual, you know, people that can regulate for all tournament organizers hiring their production crews, their staff, and everything like that. We need some form of association to kind of make sure that all of these tournament organizers and all of these production companies and everyone is kind of abiding by this rule that, okay, if you have members of staff working for you, you have to make sure that they are able to eat. Because I've worked at events before where I've not even been able to get a drink of water, and I've been on stage in a boiling hot booth with stage lights on you, and I've literally felt like I'm going to pass out before. But you can't say anything because, you know, it won't look right on camera. You can't leave. You feel like you're kind of in a position where I kind of have to just put up with this because this is the way that it is.
Yeah, it's associations, unions. It's historically we've tried to find ways to unify our voice. You know, what what a lot of this reminds me of is even just recently with like GameStop and AMC. And initially the idea is, look, these big brokerages are destroying companies. They're cannibalizing them to make a killing. What if we pushed back in numbers and really did something here? And a lot of people did, and it's cost some of these groups billions of dollars, who have been trying to manipulate the market. They're furious about it, and it's really incredible to see how many people are collectively coming together to fight back against market manipulation. But inevitably, you'll have people that are just like, "No, I'm just here to make some money off of this because this stuff is great." That's I think there's a lot of power that we have in just again establishing those boundaries and being very strict with them, and hoping that other people really do the same, calling on other people to do the same. We saw this with the Me Too movement in gaming. It was just accepted that these things were going to happen to you if you're a woman in this industry, and suddenly it was not. And now the people who commit these kinds of offenses, a lot of them have been outed. A lot of them are now hyper aware if they're still in the industry, and cautious, concerned, worried. It's going to happen less. We've decided collectively that this is not acceptable. This doesn't get to happen. And this is the same kind of boundary we need to enforce against being overworked, against this kind of churn and burn mentality, against they're not being food or water to access when you're going to be at a 16-hour tournament, with no air conditioning. Like these are things, if we put a board, an association, a union, then that's something that happens. But for now, we can just really do it individually. And yeah, I think it's going to be initially a lot more punishing than it is rewarding, unfortunately.
I think the key story here is really it's boundaries that are being set. A lot of the issues is that people assume that they can do certain things, and the other side assume that those things are normal, and it's like, no, there's some boundaries that need to be set here. And I think that's the biggest fundamental part of the esports industry completely, is that boundaries need to be set somehow across everything. Like, where it doesn't matter what it is, it can be mental health, it can be burnout, it can be the Me Too argument, everything. There just seems to be that common thread there, that boundaries haven't been set properly for whatever reason.
I think it's also like, I feel like a lot of viewers for big streamers, I don't know what it is, but people feel like they have this sense of entitlement to know the ins and outs of people's lives. Like, I know a lot of fans or viewers of people will just think that they're entitled to know if someone is in a relationship, or if, I don't know, what they're up to on their free days, what they're doing. And I don't know, it's weird, because it's almost like if you're streaming and you're like a personality in the gaming industry and stuff, people already have so much of your life and what you do public. It's a shame that people then think that, that entitles them to know more and absolutely everything about this person's life, because it often ends up being a case of, well, everything about my life is so public. I actually kind of just want to keep something private for myself. And I think it's strange to me that people think that they're entitled to, harass and, know everything about someone's life. It's just bizarre.
Especially when you're not friends with them either. Like, that's the worst thing about it. Yeah. So
I had a question.
Oh, okay.
It's a quick question.
I was just stealing my thunder there.
Sorry. I was just going to say, during the pandemic, have RAD had more cases of people coming to them struggling with their mental health, or is it being very much like a consistent, it's pretty much the same as it was since before the pandemic?
No, a lot more people. A lot more people, and with very, very different reasonings. Initially, and over the years, a lot of the people that reach out to us, they've never had insurance. They've never had the ability to pay. It's just always been that way, and this is something that they're really, really hoping will come through and help them turn that around. During the pandemic, we saw a lot of people who were already in therapy or already on medication, and suddenly all of it's taken away. They've got this kind of grace period, depending on the country that they're in, where they get to continue those benefits for a short while, but they're immediately like, how am I going to pay for my medicine? How am I going to keep seeing my therapist? I can't without this insurance. I don't have a source of income anymore. I don't know if I'm ever going to find a job again. Nobody's hiring right now. And trying to help people just continue and maintain where they were after it was just so quickly taken away, it was a real shock to us at first. But yeah, certainly a lot more people reaching out.
I mean, I would say that surprises me, but it definitely doesn't. We've seen so many people struggling with losing their jobs and, being stuck indoors, not knowing kind of what to do with themselves. As Gump, me and you spoke about this previously, as gamers, people would probably think that we would love nothing more than to be locked in our rooms playing video games all day. But the reality of it is that it makes you realize how much you actually miss that human contact, that interaction, seeing people at LAN events. Like, I just can't describe how happy I'm going to be to finally see everyone again at a LAN event and see crowds being happy and people playing games, but it feels like it's a lifetime away right now.
Well, yeah, I said to you, I can't remember who I was saying it to, but I know I said at work anyway that in the first lockdown, I said that I was made for this. Like, as a gamer, you're made for the fact that, everything social has gone away, and you can stay inside and be a gamer and do that. And for the first lockdown, worked perfectly. For the second lockdown, not so. You got around it, but I think, especially this last lockdown, over the Christmas period, the fact that the weather's been crap, I certainly, I will happily admit that I have absolutely struggled. I spent the longest period of time since moving to where I've moved to, which is Plymouth. It's been the longest time that I've spent away from my parents. And it was very difficult for me to cope in the circumstances. Not to mention that, obviously, I'm not one of those people who has either lost their jobs over the pandemic, but I have been still working, and that's brought its own kind of mental health issues into it, like the fact that, obviously not everyone complies with the 2 meter social distancing rules. Not everyone complies with the mask situation and the abuse that you get from all of that. It's been a lot tougher having to deal with the pandemic in its way, especially for me. But certainly during the first lockdown, I felt like, you were made for this. You were invincible as such when it came to that. I remember you playing Monopoly, and it was just like, oh my God, we can play Monopoly. Like, and it's,
Every night.
Exactly, these kind of things just happen naturally during the first lockdown, and you could get around your mental health kind of issues by socializing with friends in a different way. But certainly as time grew on, it became more difficult, because, like you said, you missed that social interaction It was great seeing Duix this week to catch up with some beers in a pub and finally socialise. That's what we all live for. We all live for the hugs and the social interaction, and it's certainly been a challenge, to say the least.
Yeah, I completely agree. Another question for you. If you had to give some advice to the games industry as a whole, to people that are up and coming, struggling to make it in the industry, your one bit of advice to cope with the anxieties and the stress and the pressure.
I think the best single thing I've seen is being very disciplined with your schedule. It's such an odd thing because I think there's different pieces of advice you can give about like the social climb or the skill level or how to get employed, how to stay employed, things like that. But the people that I have seen do the best, the people that I have seen remain the healthiest, are people who have good schedule discipline. They wake up at the same times, they go to sleep at the same times, they take breaks at the same times, they limit how much of themselves that they can give at any time, and they remain. They endure. They are able to live a much more balanced, healthy lifestyle, and sometimes that can be punishing, but more often than not, it's rewarding. When we stop defining ourselves by our career, when we stop defining ourselves by, how people perceive us in terms of social rank or followers and things along those lines, and we start to feel more connected to ourselves, it gets a lot easier to endure a lot of the stress of this industry. When people push on you, you push back because there's more to this life than them, and this opportunity in this situation. You kind of tend to respond to stress in a better way in general, and it shows. You're not as upset or frustrated or angry. You're not as exhausted, and these are other things that start to show over time with somebody who's constantly at work but can't muster the energy to even answer an email because there's a lot going on. It's those things that will help you maintain and survive a lot of this.
Thank you
Sound
so
advice.
much. Thank you so much for being a part of the show and giving us all of your amazing insight. Once again, I think the work that you and Rad are doing is absolutely amazing. So please do make sure that you guys check them out. Jason, have you got any final words for us?
Start therapy. For anybody that's out there, just you really don't have anything to lose by going. You just have so much to learn, so much to gain from going, and maybe some of these questions too will get, I guess, become revealed to how much you should grind, how much you should commit to this, where you should go. You get to really answer these questions for yourself in that environment. So I appreciate you having me and giving me this platform to say these things.
Well, thank you, Jason, because it's been a revelation, really. And the fantastic thing about what Rad is the fact that it started from a WoW guild, and that just, in a nutshell, that's gaming. That is the beauty of gaming. It's a group of people coming together and forming something, crowdfunding, a source of therapy. And I think if we could have more like you guys in the scene, then this world would be a better place, I would say.
I could say the same. That's having this conversation, being willing to talk about these things, and hosting this platform really is what makes the difference. we can't help people if they don't know we exist. So I appreciate this so much.
Well, thank you very much, Jason, for your time tonight. We're gonna wrap this show up. I believe we've covered. What we doing?
Should I dive into the spoiler that Jason?
Yeah. Dive into the spoiler that
Jason, if you're watching, if you're still listening, Jason, thanks for the spoiler. Everyone's got to pretend like this is brand new information, but thanks to Blue Microphones, we are going to be doing a giveaway for a Yeticaster bundle. So please do make sure, if you guys are listening to this on podcast, or if you're watching it in the stream right now, make sure you keep an eye on the EPIC.LAN Twitter page, because you've got a Yeticaster bundle up for grabs.
Wow, that sounds amazing, Jasmine. Do tell me more.
Do tell you more. Well, I already had to record the audio for it, so I'm just gonna be a repeat of what I said earlier. But yes, honestly, I'm not even going full sellout mode right now. I love my mic right now. Honestly, people always used to complain. These
microphones are amazing.
Yeah, they really are. Like, people used to complain that my mic was way too quiet and things like that, but here I am now, no longer quiet. No more excuses for not being able to hear me during games, guys.
Exactly. So that's really what brings us to the end of the show. So I hope everyone's enjoyed this particular show on mental health. I hope we've kind of educated people on mental health, and also perhaps shed a light on what you can do if you are in difficult circumstances. The old cliche of a problem shared is a problem halved is kind of something I stick to on a daily basis by helping a lot of my friends out. If you do suffer with mental health, then do not suffer alone. The biggest thing you could do is thinking that you are alone in everything, and I can tell you right now, especially from what I've heard from my friends over the last year, people are not alone in their circumstances. There are a lot of people who are worried about money, about life, about their achievements in life. You name it, people are worried about it. So make sure you seek the relevant help. Help is not a weakness, and you are not a burden to anyone, and that's just how I feel about it. And mental health is a massive thing that I know for the next 10 years will certainly be something that will be at the forefront of people's minds, and a reminder that what you see on social media from people is not the be-all and end-all of their lives. Behind a smiling, happy photo could be 1,000 problems. Just because someone else might be rich doesn't make them actually rich. They could be in lots of debt. You name it. We've said it.
Wise words.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to mental health, it's a subject I certainly care about. So, yeah. Jasmine, any final thoughts from tonight? What did you think Jason sort of nailed in the show so far?
I think all of the information he gave us was incredibly useful, not just for up-and-coming players, but content creators, people working in the industry, organizations, companies, TOs, you name it. I feel like all of the information he's kindly given us and shared with us is all tips and advice and information that we can use to shape our industry going forward. And I think I said it before, we have an amazing industry. The industry is booming. We've got so much opportunity. So I think it's up to us to make sure as soon as possible we do put those regulations in place. We do have these difficult conversations about mental health, and we do kind of normalize speaking about it so we can kind of get rid of the stigma and we're able to help people. So yeah, I'm very thankful for the fact that Jason came on the show and gave us his time. I'm thankful for us having the opportunity to do a show like this, and I hope that, you know, if you are listening, if you are watching and you are struggling, that you do not hesitate to reach out to RAD. Again, that's Rise Above the Disorder for those of you that don't know what the actual acronym standard for. But yeah, please do make sure that you reach out for help, regardless of what country you're in, how old you are. You know, help is available for you. You just have to be willing to want it.
That is true. So, our next podcast will be on the 25th of June, for those of you who are interested. I won't reveal the title just yet because I think we may rework it in our creative meetings going forward. So it will be a subject that we will cover in great detail about esports and UK esports, maybe. Who knows? And we'll probably get some more guests on who may be of interest to some of you. But yeah, join us on the 25th of June. We will be back for a third show. Thank you very much to Blue Microphones for their fantastic microphones, because it picks up literally everything, as John has found out in the previous show. And yeah, just peace out, everyone, and enjoy yourselves.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.